Romesh, my brother.
Hello, Tom. How are you?
Very good, man. Thank you for making time for me on your lunch hour.
No worries, man.
And thanks for not eating. I thought maybe you'd be chewing a sandwich while we were talking.
I'm trying to. Well, I'm not eating for two reasons. One, I'm trying to not eat too much. I had a massive breakfast. Two, I do a podcast, and we had somebody eating on that podcast, and I've never received so many angry messages about that. People don't like the sound of people eating, so I'm trying to save your podcast.
Listen on the headphones with excellent sound, so banging on tables, too much wind.
Sure.
There's a lot of things that could irritate the shit out of a listener.
Yes, yeah, but chewing is one of the sort of talking while you're chewing seems to aggravate people more than I would say anything really, like racism.
Littering.
Yeah.
Bad manners.
Yes, sure.
Let's talk about happy sounds. Now, I got here, I'm waiting for you. This is obviously the studios where you're working on your TV show.
Yeah.
So, it's a comedy show.
Yeah.
And your writer's room, I'm waiting for you, and I'm hearing people screaming their heads off with laughter.
Yeah, that is when we're not talking about the show. That's always the way, right?
I'm like, that's that's the sound that you want to hear coming from a writer's room on a comedy
really bad,
show.
man. We wrote, it's so fun, isn't it? Because you sort of like, you must, when you're in writers' rooms, you don't know. I don't know how writers' rooms work. I didn't know how writers' rooms worked, and I still don't really. But you sort of. The conversation veers off to everything and you start laughing loads and then you think, oh shit, are we being productive here? I don't know. Do you know what I mean? So I don't really, even with writing stand-up individually and being in writers' rooms, I don't know what the system is, but most of the time when people are laughing a lot, it is when we veered off the subject of the show. That is a sad truth of it. It's a damning indictment of what I do in my career, really.
Now, is this Judge Romesh that you're working on?
No, Judge Romesh is done. So we're sort of we're working on a couple of things at the moment, but I'm about to start on League of Their Own, a new season of League of Their Own. So we're sort of doing bits and pieces for that.
What is that? I don't know. Is that a panel?
It's like a sports panel show. Yeah, yeah. That we start filming tomorrow.
So what is that? Like 3 television shows you have?
Well, I'm not. This is not my TV show. This one. I am merely a component part of that. But I'm just riding that diversity wave. Do you know what I mean? And then that'll eventually end. And then they won't want brown people.
All I keep hearing in Los Angeles is from my manager is it's not a good time to be a white guy.
I know. I mean, because I was in LA like the year before last. And somebody said to me, it's a great time to be a brown guy in this town. Like it was like. It's mad. It's actually, the same thing is happening over, the same, I don't know what the attitude is in America on TV and with regards to diversity, but I know that, you don't really have a panel show culture in the States, whereas we do, this sort of, and one of the big controversies about that over the last few years is there's not enough women on them, and they're not diverse enough. And so TV channels have, decided that they want to address that, and so you will not see a panel show now. I can't imagine you'd see a panel show of all white men now, ever. Because they're just they're trying to deal with that. But the thing is that it's not been a gradual thing because they haven't.
They overcorrected
exactly. So that's
100%.
Yeah,
which is interesting because, from my perspective, it's beautiful and it's long overdue, but. My whole life, I've tried not to be an ignorant white guy,
right.
And I've been searching, and I've been.
I'm a huge fan, by the way.
Thank you, brother. Well, we're gonna get to how we know each other. So, I moved to San Francisco, I moved to Amsterdam, and so this multi-ethnic, multinational utopia that I always dreamed of.
Yes.
I didn't realize would exclude me.
Well,
it's the perfect world I dreamed of.
Yeah,
didn't have a place for me.
It's a weird one actually, because I do sort of think I do think it's like you said, it's an overcorrect. It's a correction for something that hadn't happened up to this point, and what you'd like is for that to have happened organically and gradually, but now it's gone completely the other way. And I think it's an imperfect solution to the problem, And I think it does mean that the truth is that white guy. It's difficult for. It's sort of. Is it difficult? It is difficult for white guys. You know, is that thing of like. It's certainly become more difficult. Do you know what I mean? And I sort of I completely get the complexities of it. It's a difficult one, and then I don't buy this argument where people go, well, white guys have had it good for so long. It's about time that I just don't like. I don't think that's the way we should address it. The way we should address it is we're all trying to work to this together, and you figure out a way that. I mean, I'm sort of getting waffly now, but I just think that it's a tricky one, and I don't feel like just going. You're a white guy, you're extinct now or something. Do you know what I mean? I just don't think that's the
yeah. I mean, it's. I mean, you. I mean, it's. I mean, just excluding anybody. It's the and it's the why I was always drawn to stand-up comedy. I mean, I just comedy's my religion. It's my political party.
Right.
And I always knew I couldn't be racist or homophobic when I was growing up because I knew I wanted to be a comedian.
Sure.
So, and it's got everybody, and it's what I love about comedy.
Yeah.
That it doesn't matter if you're black or white or rich or poor or gay or straight. It's all that matters is if you were funny.
Yeah.
That's always been my guiding principle of why comedy is the perfect socialist utopia.
Yeah.
But apparently I was wrong. Okay. So everything I ever held dear, all my theories have been proven wrong. Like now. I pitched Netflix a special last year, and they rejected it.
Did they tell you why?
They're not looking for white guys, is what.
Is that genuinely what was said?
That's what they told my manager.
Right.
I mean, unless you're already a massive household name. So if you were a lesbian Palestinian comedian who's only been on stand-up for 3 months, I think you'd have a better chance of getting on Netflix right now than I do.
Which, I mean, you've just described me, and that's why I'm looking forward to. That's me, 100%, man.
I am going for the vegan anarchist lesbian market.
You're right.
That's my target audience.
I can't believe that that's what was said, but I don't know. It's a weird one, isn't it? Because you sort of think like, obviously, I know that you're hilarious.
I've always known I'm in it for life. I'm not going anywhere, and I knew it would be tough at times.
Yeah.
So I mean, and I think it's great. When I started comedy in America in 1984, Jesus, that was a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was the straight white guy dominated world.
Yeah.
The blazer jacket rolled up to the elbows and guys with the bolo tie.
Yeah.
And it was sexist and homophobic and all that. And I love the evolution of stand-up.
Yeah.
Now there's brilliant comedians of every human flavor and sexual orientation. And it's just, there's more voices and more stories that need to be told. But that doesn't mean that we never have to hear a white story ever again.
No, exactly. I know. And it's that.
Fortunately, I like brown women, so my game plan is to have a little caramel child.
Right.
And then that child's going to be a star.
Yes. Yeah. I know. I totally agree with what you're saying. It's great to have a variety of voices, but that shouldn't mean that anybody's excluded. Do you know what I mean? And even if straight white guy has been the perceived default setting, do you know what I mean? That doesn't mean that you suddenly just completely get rid of that. So I think what's happening is hopefully we're arriving at a balance or a situation, at an equilibrium, but who knows? There was this thing, wasn't there, that in this country that ethnic minorities are overrepresented in advertising because, for example, black people make 3% of the population in this country, and they're in, I can't remember what the exact figure was, but something like 30% of adverts. Do you know what I mean? So it's sort of like it's a different one. It's a difficult one to sort of arrive at what should be happening, because if things are truly representative, then you have to take those sort of things into account. I just think it's a complicated issue. Do you know what I mean? And I don't think we've arrived at what we're going to do in the long term. Do you know what I mean?
It's interesting. I took a break on England for 5 years, and I'm doing this tour with Reginald D. Hunter.
Yeah, how's it going?
Oh, incredible!
Yeah,
to play all these grand old theaters all over England. I'm in love with this country again.
Right.
And but I never realized how a lot of the brown and darker hued ethnicities are primarily concentrated in the big city area.
Yes, sure, yeah.
So going out to we were in King's Lynn last night, which was a lovely place.
Yeah.
There was one brown person in the audience.
Yeah.
You know, and Reginald points this out. But just, you know, if I think if I was an American white racist who hated ethnicities, I think there's loads of English countryside.
Yeah, I know. It's weird actually because I remember when I first started doing. Weirdly, I made that sort of discovery as well, even though having grown up here, not made that discovery, but I remember like when I started as a stand-up, I would like go to these other towns, like, and I remember that I did a bit of material about this guy in a barber's assuming that I was an immigrant. Right? I just sort of made the assumption just based on my appearance.
Even though you've got like the most London accent.
Yes,
ever.
right, yeah. And I remember I remember doing the bit, and like the story was like the guy says something sort of borderline offensive to me, and then I respond to him, and that's the end of that's the joke. But I remember going to some towns, and they would laugh at what the guy had said to me, and he sort of think, oh shit, they've got a completely different perspective on it because they don't have immigration in it, or they don't have ethnic minorities in this town or whatever. But that doesn't, that doesn't mean that I wouldn't have good gigs there. And I'm sure Reg has good gigs wherever he goes. But it's just like you sort of go, well, actually, not everybody has the same perspective when it comes to these sort of issues. I mean, you sort of assume, like you said, that everybody's in the same boat, but they're not. Some people don't have
like if you go to like the South and rural areas in America, it's amazing. Yeah. There's for like the past 20, 30, 40 years are Indian people, Asians, Africans and people who've emigrated to like the most country redneck places in America.
Yeah.
So I think that is kind of uniquely British that some of the countryside has stayed so friggin' honky, you know?
Yeah, it is a weird one, yeah.
So now, is Judge Romesh finished?
Yeah, we actually filmed that. I think the series is finished now. We filmed that whole show over like 4 days. So.
Oh, you're kidding?
Yeah. So we.
That seems like it could be. Forgive my terminology, but. The quintessential late night stoner viewing.
Yes, I know. Yeah.
Forever.
Yeah.
Because I caught it a couple weeks ago when I came in, and it's a great show. Like
it's a really fun show to do. Yeah.
The pretentiousness of these judge shows is in America, and there's like 8 of them now.
Right.
Like there's 2 or 3 really good ones. I think that where it's legal wranglings, and then it's just. A snooty judge on a bench reprimanding people.
Yeah, well, it's sort of when I
like where yours is more based in ridicule.
Yes, it is. Yeah, it is.
And I think that should be the ultimate punishment in life.
Yeah, it is sort of based in ridicule. We sort of, because this series is a second series. When we did the first series, like the best cases we found were the ones where there was some real. There's some reality. It was real. Do you know what I mean? And those cases always work better. And then some of them you felt like the people were doing it to get on TV. And obviously you're going to have that to a certain degree with everybody. They're doing it because they want to be on TV. But it's nice if the cases are legit and you can sort of you feel like there's some real jeopardy there. Not serious jeopardy, but it's a really fun show to do, man.
It looks fun, and I like your your persona and personality on it. It's like you come off as the no-nonsense judge, but then you can, like, squash the people like bugs through comedy and jokes. Like the one that I saw, it was a mother and daughter, and the daughter had turned her bedroom into, like, a goth dungeon.
Oh, yeah, with the...
And I'm watching the whole thing, and I'm like, okay, well, of course, the mother runs the home and pays the bills. So her authority is the ultimate word, but... No, you ruled with the daughter, and I was like, yeah, fuck yeah. There should be no. It's not like a legal precedent show. Like,
Yeah,
it's a comedy show.
Yeah, I'm not hamstrung by actual legal responsibilities. Yeah, so I just sort of go with my gut on it. But sometimes, like people get infuriated when I go against. There's some show. I'll be honest with you. There'll be a runner case, and I think I fucked up the judgments on all of those, man. Like I definitely went the wrong way. But I'm not going to call it back now. And sometimes I get tweets from people going, I couldn't have disagreed with you more on that judgment. Do you know what I mean? But it's.
But why isn't that show going to run? It seems like you got the juice to, and then there's never-ending domestic squabbles.
Yeah, I guess we could do more. I mean, we haven't thought about it really. I sort of, to be honest with you, when we did the first series, you sort of thought, well, I think this is a funny idea. I hadn't come to that conclusion that you had that it could run and run and run. I just thought, let's just see. It could be fun, and then it was fun. And so we did a second series, but I always get nervous about pushing a good thing too far. Do you know what I mean? So I'm always a little bit reticent.
That's always the British way, where like instead of make a series for 10 years, you make 10 great episodes and then like walk away from it.
Yeah, I know, it's fun, isn't it? Because in America, like I couldn't fucking believe it when I suddenly became aware of how long the seasons are with American. They just look at British TV and go, how fucking lazy are you, man? Do you know what I mean?
But I think that's how it became later, with like HBO took the British paradigm, and then some Netflix shows. You know.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's a fun show, so I'd happily do it again. But I always think, shit, I don't want to get to the point where I think we've jumped the shark here. Do you know what I mean? So
I think you get about 100, 200 more episodes.
Okay, great. It's good to know. Thank you.
And what's Ranga Nation? Is that?
Yeah, Ranga Nation is.
I'm like,
well, I wanted to do a topical show, but not something that wasn't overly political. Just sort of like a social commentary thing. So we just did this show where we have 25 members of the British public, who are the Ranga Nation. One of whom is my mum, and we sort of we discuss the week's issues. I mean, or it's like whatever's coming up. So it could be politics. Like last couple of weeks, we talked about the Tory leadership contest. We've also talked about issues like people becoming addicted to taking selfies and sort of influencers and stuff like that. And we just we chew the fat over those things. I have a couple of guests as well, like. It's normally one comic and one non-comic, and then we just go through the week's stuff basically. Do you know what I mean? And it's interesting because like the Ranga Nation, those guys, those members of the public, they don't often fall into the sort of stereotypes of what you think their views might be. Just interesting getting an average person's take on things. Do you know what I mean? Without it getting too heated. It's not supposed to be like, question time or whatever where we're going at each other. It's just supposed to be sort of a lively discussion of the things of the week basically. That's kind of the premise of the show. You're supposed to be able to summarise a show in one sentence, and I've taken 15 minutes to do that, so it's a bad sign for the
elevator pitch.
Yeah, exactly.
Just imagine it's a very tall building and we have some extra time. So what does your mom do on the show?
She's a member of the Ranga Nation, but I think probably her role in it is that I kind of am a little bit of a piss taker with the Ranga Nation, and so it's good for them to have a member of the team that can eviscerate me really, because obviously my mum can sort of take me down whenever she wants really. So she is a member of the Ranga Nation, probably the least well informed member I would say, but the member who's most well equipped to knock me down a peg or two if I sort of get too sort of shitty. Do you know what I mean?
So is that a limited run of episodes?
We just finished.
As well?
We just finished. Yeah.
What, like 10 episodes?
6.
Oh my god! So you just do a lot of mini show ideas.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Just jump from thing to thing. I think like actually the truth is like in the UK, and I'm sure it's the same with in the States. It's difficult to bed in those types of shows. Do you know what I mean? Like studio shows. Topical studio comedy shows are difficult. Not difficult, but it's just a bit of a risk. Do you know what I mean? Because people either take to them or really hate them. Do you know what I mean? And so I think that it's sort of an idea of getting 6 out there and seeing if people like it or not, or seeing if we can. But I think that is like Judge Romesh, I guess. If you wanted to, you could run that show probably, because you're sort of dependent on what comes up every week. But it's quite a labour-intensive show to put together. But yeah, I think.
And is it set up like a panel show?
Kind of, yeah. So you've got the two comedy guests, the two kind of celeb guests, if you want, for want of a better term, and then you've got like just the whole of the Ranga Nation sort of sat to my left. And so I'll set up a story, and then I'll go, right, what do you think about this? And I'll sort of prod them and push them based on what they say, or I'll try and challenge them on a thing, or we just sort of take something in an unexpected direction. So, for example, we're talking about the Tory leadership, and one of the candidates, I can't remember who it was. It might have been Jeremy Hunt, but anyway, one of them was asked who would win in a fight between a lion and a bear. It must have been some social media, like, insane interview. And then we ended up in a 45-minute discussion about who would win between a lion and a bear. So you just sort of don't know where the discussion will go. So it's kind of... and then the guests are, they can draw their own conclusions from what the Ranga Nation say, or they can ask some questions and stuff like that. But so it's sort of slightly different to a panel show, because you've got this group, this sort of organ, if you like, of 25 people that are all constantly pumping out their views, and they don't all agree with each other. Sometimes they get kind of quite passionate, do you know what I mean? But it never gets to the point where nobody's shouting at each other, do you know what I mean? It's not like, it doesn't get that vicious.
Because it's not America.
Right, yeah.
Where everybody shouts.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't see them, but I read about, you made 2 different shows for the BBC.
Oh, yeah.
Where one, you took your mom to Sri Lanka.
Yes, yeah.
And then another one where you took her to the States to visit some relatives.
Yeah,
so, sure. Do you think you're milking your mom a little too hard on this?
I think, Tom, that is a very pertinent observation. Well, the thing was, it's like, because what happened was, it's like because that show, the one where we went to Sri Lanka, what happened was is that this production company said, we got this idea for you to do a travel show, and they come in with this director, and we had sort of agreed that, I don't know how popular comedian-led travel shows are in the States, but like one of the things that I'd always been sort of, that me and the director discussed, was the fact that travel shows are much better when there's a point to them. Do you know what I mean? So seeing somebody go somewhere for the sake of going somewhere is always obviously interesting, but it's much better if there's some reason, right? So I just started doing stand-up I just had kids at that time, and my mum had been getting really frustrated with my lack of connection with my roots, and she was worried that now that I had kids, that they were going to completely lose any connection, because I had such a limited connection with my culture. And so I started doing stand-up about it. So we had this idea of, okay, well, your mum, it's your mum's dream is that you go back to Sri Lanka and get in touch with your roots. And so the BBC, because they'd never seen me do anything like that, they wanted a taster tape of like me interacting with people and stuff like that, just to see if I could do that, because they'd never seen me doing stand-up. I'd only done stand-up, and done like a couple of panel show appearances. So we did this taster tape. Obviously, you can't go to Sri Lanka for a taster tape, so it's just me like booking the trip. And then as part of that, we filmed with my mum, like talking about where she'd want me to go in Sri Lanka. She's completely undirectable, my mum. She won't sort of follow any sort of instruction. But she was just being really great. And then we put the taster tape. We gave the taster tape to BBC, and we sort of watched the edit of the taster tape, and she's properly funny. Do you know what I mean? Just when she's being herself, that what we realised is once she drops any kind of, once she stopped being nervous about being on camera and she was just being herself, she was much more entertaining and funny. So then we ended up putting her in the series. I had no fucking idea she was going to be such a breakout star from that. Do you know what I mean? And so
in her neighbourhood, she's
oh mate,
she's the king.
Oh yeah, she's loving life. Do you know what I mean? So it was kind of an unexpected thing, and obviously it's great.
How long had it been since she had been back to Sri Lanka?
She hadn't been for because of the trouble over there, she hadn't been for maybe 10 years or something like that. And I hadn't been since I was
I love stories of immigration and how families get to different countries. My mother's from Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Right.
And about 10, 15 years ago, I took my mother back there.
Yeah.
She hadn't been in 40 years.
Right.
And then a lot of stories from different friends of mine who have got different origin immigration stories in their family, a similarity thing that my mom told me that I've heard from other friends is like the parent didn't want to go back. Right. Like my mom was happy to go back.
Yeah.
She hadn't seen some cousins in like 40 years, but then afterwards she was like, you know, we left there for a reason.
Yes, yeah. Well, I mean, yeah.
Like I appreciate that you want to get in touch with your roots. And I'm glad that you did this trip for me, but like seriously.
Yeah. My mum was like that as well, to be honest with you. I mean, she loves Sri Lankan culture. She loves Sri Lankan food. She loves Sri Lanka. She loves everything about that. But she's been in England longer than she has been. She was in Sri Lanka. Do you know what I mean? She left there when she was like 18, 19.
Yeah, like my mother's the proudest American you would ever.
Right. Yeah. Sure. You know? So my mum loves Britain, and she she loves everything about it, and. She went back to, when we went back, she does like it. But if I said to her, do you fancy coming back here permanently to live? She would tell me to fuck off. There's no way. Do you know what I mean? She loves it in the UK. So, yeah, it was a similar thing with her, really. But her thing was, you're British, but you've got this beautiful heritage and you don't know anything about it. I didn't really particularly learn anything about it, going and doing a TV show there for 6 weeks. But it did make me think. The truth is, the thing that I took away from it more than anything else is that I appreciated my mum's journey, for want of a less kind of pretentious thing to say. Like, I appreciate that more because my mum and dad came from they each respectively came from tiny villages in Sri Lanka where they were the only people that had left those villages to go elsewhere. And so I'd only seen my parents as an essentially a British kid growing up with Sri Lankan parents. I sort of see them and compare them to my friends who had English parents. And I think to myself, shit, you came from this tiny rural village in Sri Lanka, and now you're this worldly woman that's unfazed, unoffendable, do you know what I mean? Westernised. And it sort of gave me an extra degree of appreciation that I probably didn't have before. So I feel like in a weird way I sort of got to know her more a bit as a result of knowing what her background was more than I had done, do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, stories that came out with my mom and her cousins and different things that meant things to her. It was priceless to take that journey with her. Yeah. So what about the family that you visited in the United States?
Well, because my dad had, my dad's no longer with us, but he had 8 brothers and a sister, and they sort of dissipated across the world, and some of them ended up settling in.
And you had never met these?
Met some of them, but not all of them, particularly my cousins, and some of them we'd seen, a lot of them, because my dad was one of the first ones to leave Sri Lanka, and he settled in London, and then some of his brothers came to London to stay with my mum and dad, and then they went off to wherever they ended up settling. So I've got family in Australia and family in America and family in Canada, and so when we were doing, to be honest with you, when we did the first series of that show, we'd always thought of it as a one-off. We just thought it's a one-off story where I go back to get in touch with my roots, and that's it. We just do one-off, very late, as you know, you've got that from me now, very much punch in, punch out. Yeah, we're done. And then because it was more of a success than we'd anticipated, they were sort of saying, the production company, the channel, were sort of saying you should think about doing a second series. And we could have gone back to Sri Lanka, I guess, but I wanted to. This is a really weird thing to say, but weirdly, our decision to go to America was inspired by Eastbound and Down because Eastbound and Down. I don't know if you watched that show.
Yeah, the baseball show.
Yeah. So the second series of that, they completely relocated and changed everything to Mexico. Yeah. And so I said to the director, I'm happy to do a second series if that second series is completely different to the first series. I think that let's roll the dice on it and do something completely different. We could just go back to Sri Lanka and do the same thing again, but I just don't think that'd be the brave thing to do. I mean, it's an interesting enough thing to do. And then the fact of the matter is I've got family in North America and Canada, and so I just said, let's do that, where it's that's the next thing. We've gone back to the roots, and now let's see where our family have ended up. And so that's why we decided to go to...
So where were they, and how different did their lives turn out than your families coming to Britain?
It's just... that was nice.
I've learned a lot of. Our tour manager is a London Cockney guy, so
right.
So isn't it?
Yeah.
Nottingham, Birmingham.
Yeah.
I'm learning things.
That's good.
Birmingham,
yeah.
Yeah, it's just how different did their lives turn out in North America?
I guess it's just
they're eating meat and they're
all that
pagans.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're just completely free of any morals. Yeah,
death metal.
Yeah. No, it was just interesting seeing that. You're so, I am so British in my humour and sensibilities and stuff like that, and then my cousin, who was in the first episode of that second series, who lives in Detroit, he's so American, and I thought that was that's just an interesting thing. We're so malleable, and you're so shaped by your surroundings and circumstances.
Yeah, that's why I think family stories of immigration are so interesting.
And so I've got this cousin who's like my dad's brother's son, and he and I are like, we're so different, man. I mean, we really got on, but it's just so interesting to go. Our lives are so divergent, and it came from this same starting point. I don't know. I thought that whole thing was so interesting. Do you know what I mean? And then I sort of, we didn't do it for the show, but I went and saw my Aussie cousins, and similarly, I'm talking to stereotypical Australian people who are my cousins. Do you know what I mean? It's so. I find all that really interesting, and my family have ended up going all over the place, and it's been really nice in a way that our lives, because obviously that number of brothers generate a lot of cousins. So there's a lot of us who see each other once every 10 years, if that. Do you know what I mean? And at the moment, I've got a cousin over from Australia, and it's lovely having her over here with her family. But I know it'll be heartbreaking when they have to go back, because I don't know when we don't know when we'll find the time to hook up again. Do you know what I mean? So you have this thing where it's beautiful in a way, because you get to go and see your cousins in different parts of the world, but at the same time you do think I'm seeing them a lot less than I would have done if all the families stayed in the same place. But this is like some sliding doors bullshit I'm doing now. There's no way how things can turn out.
No, I mean, I understand. Because I've been to Argentina 3 times, and my cousins, they're beautiful people.
Yeah.
And when are you coming back? There's a lot of other places in the world I'd like to see.
Yeah.
And we're friends on Facebook. I'm planning on going to Brazil later this year. I know that's going to piss every one of them off.
Yeah.
How can you come to Brazil and not come to Argentina?
I know. Well, I had the worst thing because I went to the same country. I went to Australia like last year or the year before.
And you didn't see them?
No, because they were in Brisbane and I did Melbourne and Sydney.
Yeah.
And then I went to New Zealand, and then I went back, and that was. They were annoyed about.
Did you do the New Zealand Comedy Festival?
I did. I was there for like 2 nights. I did the gala, and then I did 2 shows in one night at a casino there. It was nice, but have you done that?
I did it in 2013. I
right.
loved it. I was there for a month. One of the best.
You were there for a month because
I did the festival because you came in on the big star thing. The big star acts just do 2 nights. I did 2 weeks at the Classic.
Right.
The main comedy club, and then I did a 2-week Best of the Fest tour and did theaters all over. 1 week all over the North Island.
Yeah.
1 week all over the South
I think
Island.
I think I would have enjoyed it more doing that because I sort of came in because we're trying to fit this trip into a short time, and then so I was in and out of New Zealand, but what that meant was I found the whole thing a bit of a bit of a head fuck. Do you know what I mean? Because I sort of I'd come in from Australia, literally sort of get dropped off in my hotel. Then later on that night, I did the gala, and then I did the 2 shows. And so you sort of think actually, because when I did Melbourne, I'd been in Melbourne for a few days before I started doing the shows. So my first 10 minutes were just about
my observations.
Yeah. Whereas New Zealand, I couldn't do that. Oh yeah, crazy. I saw this thing an hour ago. Right? Do you know what I mean? It just doesn't work. So I think it felt a bit inauthentic, to be honest with you. You should just drop in.
Yeah, it's really great perspective I had. I mean, we won't go into Sadville too much here, but
yeah.
The previous year, Christchurch had been completely decimated by the earthquake.
Yeah.
And those were the best shows on the tour.
Right.
People in Christchurch were amazing, and it's like a really medium-sized town that had been completely destroyed.
Yeah.
And then when that horrendous mosques shootings happened, you know, it's such a lovely small place. It's really disgusting that such a heinous thing. Like
it's crazy, man. Yeah, you just don't expect that to happen somewhere like that, but it is what it is.
So, I'm glad I brought down my own podcast.
No, it's good. I like it. We just have a couple of moments of silence.
So, have you and I met before?
We met I met you at the Comedy Store.
Okay.
In London.
I knew we had met before.
So you were there with your wife.
Yeah. And we're now getting divorced.
Are you really?
Yeah.
Are you? Oh Jesus, I didn't know that. Okay.
That's okay. We're really great friends. I've never been more in love with her as I am right now.
Right. Okay.
She gave me my life back.
Okay.
And there's no hard feelings.
Yeah.
There's no hatred. We still really care about each other.
Yeah.
And she edits the podcast. She helps me with.
Right. Okay.
She's helping me with my book. She's
I thought this would be a nice story to get us past that sort of Christchurch awkwardness, but now you're getting divorced. So.
I'm sorry. It's one sad story after another with me. Sad clown. Sad clown.
So I think you're in town, and I'd heard about you because one of my friends had seen you. Maybe you've been in Edinburgh, right? Have you been in Edinburgh?
Well, that's the thing. I couldn't remember. I thought maybe it was Edinburgh in 2014 when we met, but it could have been the Comedy Store.
I'm pretty sure it's a Comedy Store. Yeah. But I know that a friend of mine had said, I saw this guy Tom Rose, and he was like, unbelievable. You got to see him, right? And I hadn't managed to get to see you in Edinburgh, and then I'd sort of checked your stuff out, and like I became a fan, and then it was this weird thing of suddenly you at the Comedy Store. I think I was doing like some sort of I was just doing a gig there. I was just on like a mixed bill gig there, and you were there, and I had this weird thing of like being a fanboy. Do you know what I mean? Because like I'd suddenly I'd become a fan of yours, and then suddenly you're at the Comedy Store. It felt like, you know, when these things feel like, I don't know, just weird, like timing, fate, designed by fate or whatever. I was just sort of like, holy shit, Tom Rose is here. Do you know what I mean? So it was like a weird thing where like, I think I may have been a bit embarrassing. Do you know what I mean? But I'm a huge fan of yours, man. So, but I'd seen you then, and it was like, holy shit, like it was a mad one.
Cool. Well, I remember, you followed me on social media, like Twitter or Instagram or whatever. And I knew your face. I was like, oh, I know that guy.
Yeah.
So I follow you back, and then over the last like 5 years of seeing your posts, you're like Michael Jordan dominating the scene. You're crushing it. So I'm like, oh my god, and I'm like,
it all started.
That guy's my friend, and he's destroying it.
Well, that's very kind of you to say, but I think it all started. I think that night at the Comedy Store may have been the moment. I think you and I meeting set me off on that trajectory.
There were television executives there to check me out, and they thought, you know what, white is passé. We need the brown guy. This is the future.
Who's this guy hanging out with Tom that actually ticks a box? Let's fucking get that guy.
No, that's awesome, man. And
mate. I mean, I think you're unbelievable, man. And like, it's just. I remember my friend, like, you know, because I love American stand-up. You know, I grew up watching it, and the thing that's so, you know, I don't know. You can talk for ages about the differences between British and American stand-up, but one of the things about American stand-up is, I think that's more so than probably British stand-up, is there's no fat and it's so lean. The sets, your guys' material, and so and sometimes that can be, you know, it's not got enough soul in it, where like, you know, sometimes it can be. I think, you know, you want it to have that combination of sort of heart and that slickness, and that's what you have. You know, like your bang 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 is so funny, but it's just got an authenticity to it. It's just really great, man. I mean, I'm a huge fan. So.
Thank you, brother. No, I mean, I'm still, you know, I feel like it's never-ending education and evolution, you know.
Yes, well, I think that's what's so addictive about it. Is because like, you know, I'm constantly like whenever you get asked questions about, you know, how do you write, or, you know, I did this gig last night, and it was a friend of mine, Tom Parry, has been teaching these refugees how to do stand-up. So he's been like from November of last year, they've been doing a gig a week, and he's been showing them how to write and stuff like that. And so I was sort of closing this gig, and when I was waiting to go on, they were asking me questions like, you know, what's your writing process, and how do you do this and how do you do that? And it sort of occurred to me that I still don't have a fucking clue. Do you know what I mean? Like, because I haven't figured out my best writing process. I haven't figured out.
I don't really have one. I've been a comedian 35 years.
Right. Yeah.
My best material comes out when I'm having intelligent conversations with friends.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
when you're with your friends, you're your most natural self.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
that's when like you're naturally popping funny things off the top of your head.
Totally, man. And it's
I can never sit down and go, I'm writing comedy.
I know,
at
but
3 o'clock.
I know, and I keep trying to do that because I think that's what you're supposed to do, but I just. You know, it doesn't work, and then suddenly, like, you know, you will come up with stuff, and then I'll go and try it. But the truth is, you know, what will happen is the majority of what funny comes out of that stuff is what occurs to me when I'm on stage. It's not what I've written down on the sheet of paper before I get on stage. It very rarely has the best thing from a routine come from something I've written before, and it will always be something I've talked about. Do you know what I mean? I might be, you know, like you said, talking to a friend, or I'm on stage and I'm trying to find the funny in it, and then suddenly there's something hits. So it's like and I think that's what's so addictive about stand-up, is you never really feel like you've nailed it, and then if your ego takes over, and you go for a period where you think you've nailed it.
I think that's when you're fucked. That's when you should get out of the business. When you think, oh, I got this all figured out. Yeah. That's when you're done.
I'm a massive Wu-Tang fan, and I remember RZA from the Wu-Tang once said, I think I've got a formula for doing these bits, and that's when I started to become nervous for him. I thought, oh shit, like this isn't. It's supposed to feel like it's alchemy, isn't it? I think that's what you feel like you're still sort of developing all the time. I think I think exactly what you said. If you think you've mastered it, I think it's probably time to quit. But
this pops into my head. Miles Davis's autobiography, Miles. He said, because he changed his style completely like 9 times. Since, the brilliance of Miles Davis. But he said in that book, what's more important than the notes that you play is the notes that you don't play.
Yes, yeah.
You know, and like I can see, like if I go to open mic night and see like what's hacky topics that people are covering, you're like, oh yeah, you want to stay away from that stuff.
Yes, yeah, totally. And it's like,
I'm sorry. That's the beauty of this tour with Reginald D. Hunter. He's a great old friend of mine. I you know, hadn't planned on coming back to England.
Right.
And comedy's my favorite thing in the world. And so he's watching my set every night. I'm watching his set every night. And all day we're just talking about our acts and developing stuff. And so I've been able to develop some good stuff on this tour. Just
how much do you mix it up on the? Are you doing the same set, or you like?
I'm trying to mix it up as much as possible.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I still have the urge to kill with certain, things like. In playing in England, I learned that the stereotype of people from Liverpool is that they're all thieves.
Yes,
I have a joke about that.
Yeah.
And I met Ringo Starr once, and the whole time I was talking to him, I was holding onto my wallet. You know, so there's like there's some jokes I can't resist, but there's another bit I've developed. I took my 80-year-old Jesus freak mother to Israel in December. And I've been doing this bit about, if you look at all the available evidence, clearly God is an asshole for putting the 3 major religions' headquarters all in the same place. If God would have wanted us to get along, and if it was a loving God, the Jewish headquarters would be in the Caribbean, the Muslims would be in Hawaii, the Christians would be in Southeast Asia. We would all enjoy visiting each other's holy lands.
Yeah.
You know, and. Anyway, I won't run the bit past you, but that's this beautiful bit that and it's been conversations with Reg, having the freedom of to play in front of an English theater audience that's attentive, and they're not drunk.
I know.
is such a luxury.
Yeah, it's fun, isn't it? Because I remember, like, I did support for a mate of mine here, and I'd been so used to, it's the first time I hadn't been doing like a comedy club, and I remember somebody said something and I eviscerated them, right? Like, you know, absolutely. And then I sort of thought, Romesh, this is not a comedy club, a lot of drunk people on a Saturday night. This is people that have come out to the theatre to have an evening. And this person just said something. It wasn't even that, but because I was so hardwired to absolutely destroy, like, you know, to just shut down anybody. I just was totally like, even my mate said to me, mate, that was a bit full on. And that it is that thing where you sort of go, I don't know, it's a different experience, isn't it? You feel a bit more able to sort of be a bit more nuanced, I guess, and like kind of explore things a bit more. But the reason I ask is because, like, when you're doing support, or when you're doing stand up, I think like the urge is to kill all the time or as much as you can possibly, and actually there is fun to be had in resisting that and trying to push on and develop yourself and work these new bits up. And sometimes you might have a slightly worse gig on the night than you otherwise might have done, but you know that you got more out of it than you could. Do you know what I mean? And it's like,
yeah. Well, I'm looking at this trip over as a time to grow and write a new hour.
Yeah.
Because my life is changing. I've been doing a lot of stuff about being married to an Indian European woman, and now my life is changing.
Yeah.
So, and I also just came out with a new album. So it's time to, come up with the next. It's exciting that I get to write the next chapter of my life right now, whatever I want it to be. So I'm really taking advantage of, like you're saying, there's the urge to kill, which I've been doing bits that I can't resist. Yeah. But I'm also, pushing it hard.
Yeah. I had this thing where, like, I've been like, because I'm going on tour in September, and I've been doing loads of new material gigs, trying out stuff, and then you'll see, and sometimes I'll drop in to, like, a mate of mine, Stephen Grant, runs a gig in Brighton, and he'll say to me, whenever
I did the Hong Kong tour with
Oh, did you? Great. So Stephen always says to me, like, whenever you've got new stuff, come and drop in. But that club is so good, and I would go down there on a Sunday night with some shit I'd written, and everybody else would be absolutely destroying with, like, their, like, machine-tooled sets. And I just sort of go on, and I'm just the shittest person on that night because I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. And you always have that temptation to just go, I just want to try and...
I've seen Chris Rock do that, which at the Comedy Cellar in New York and at the Improv in LA, him come in at the end of the night, sit on a stool with a yellow legal pad where he's just written stuff out, and he sits there and he says it, he's reading it basically with no emotion, not acting it out, and pretty much things falling flat on its ass. And then those same premises you see on the special, where he's got the Panther prowl, he's got the confidence behind it, he's worked it out. I mean, I like that he's brave enough to go eat a shit sandwich.
Yes.
When he just wants to air out the new thoughts.
I know, and it's that thing of, like, you have to put your ego to one side and go, there is a possibility that people will leave here thinking I'm not good at this. Do you know what I mean? But I have to do that to sort of develop. God, that sounds so pretentious, doesn't it? But that is what.
It's what we do.
Yeah.
It's like, people think that there's some, shortcut or some magic trick. Everything, I call it banging it out on the anvil. It's like making a sword.
Get
it hot, bang it on the anvil, put it in the water.
Totally, yeah.
It takes a long time.
It's exciting, but it's probably the most fun part of it, but also the most difficult. Do you know what I mean? That sort of thing where, I don't know how many times it's happened to you, but I've done it where I've got 10 minutes of stuff that I'm trying out and none of it lands, and you just sort of die on your ass for 10 minutes, and then you leave and you go, okay, well, I've learned something from that, and what those, however many people are in there have learned is that I'm not always good at stand-up.
Well, it was great. I've got 40 minutes every night in these theaters.
Yeah.
So I've been fascinated with the life of Lord Byron, and I've read all these books on Lord Byron. So there's been a few nights where I've done little. I did it last night. I did a little dissertation on the life of Lord Byron. Which is just because I know I'm in a theater. Yeah. It's not my normal slugging it out in Palookaville club set. That I have the liberty to do.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. I wanted to. Well, first of all, I just noticed that you have Richard Pryor tattooed on your.
Yes,
arm.
I do. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. Well, I love Richard Pryor. I mean,
Richard Pryor's the reason I'm a comedian.
Right. Same. So like
he was my dad's hero.
Right. Yeah. I remember like. I just thought I just loved everything about him, and as all comics do. I mean, I'm sort of saying the thing that all comics will say, but like.
What's your favorite Richard Pryor bit?
That's a great question. I don't know, man. I
liked all the Africa stuff because when I was a kid listening to it, I didn't understand the dirty parts. But when he like animated it, I think it's one of my favorite things about Richard Pryor, the way he would animate animals.
Yes, well, I remember what sticks out in my mind is when he's doing a bit about the two hunters going to get the deer, and then he sort of does the deer at the. He was sort of talking about how he's amazed that they ever drink any water, as scared as they are, and then he sort of the deer hears a sound, and I remember like. The thing about Richard Pryor is I sort of learnt a lot from it, because when I started doing stand-up I was so obsessed with the writing of it and the punchlines, and I didn't really perform very much, and I still don't perform loads, I'm certainly not like massively animated, but I remember like the thing about some of Richard Pryor's stuff is like you see that the magic of it is that you see that stuff written down, some of it, not all of it, but you see some of it written down and you think, well, there doesn't seem to be that much to it, and then you watch it performed and it's magic. Do you know what I mean? Like, and also the thing of where, the thing of him taking absolute tragedy and making that hilarious. And I'm not talking about it's the way that he did it was, because I've seen a lot of comedians make an audience very, very sad and then you sort of bring them out of it. That does happen, but Richard Pryor would talk about very tragic things and you'd be laughing the whole way through, and you'd almost forget about the darkness of what he was talking about. You just wouldn't appreciate that what he's talking about. If you actually, you talk about it after, you go, that's bleak as shit, man. And it's that honesty that I found so compelling. Do you know what I mean? It's and it's something that I haven't. You always sort of try and work towards, but I'm nowhere near where I want to be as a comic.
What is the greatest advice you've ever been given as a comedian?
I think probably that I guess there's the obvious advice about just writing and all that shit, but I think probably the biggest one is I got told that gave me an attitude towards things that I think has really stood me in good stead, is that there is no make or break moment in this. Like it's like no individual moment matters that much. It's like you're just trying, you're working at your stuff, you're trying to get better, and if you have a terrible gig or you have a terrible appearance on something, or you do something, or a terrible performance, your life is not going to hinge on that. Do you know what I mean? If you're supposed to do what you're supposed to do, and you should never put in too much pressure on any one of those things. And that, I think, once I started realising that actually not giving as much of a shit, or not giving too much of a shit, is actually more conducive to being loose and funny than fucking building yourself up too much. That was probably the best advice I've been given. I don't always follow it. I mean, sometimes I did a show called Live at the Apollo, which is like the big stand-up show here, and the first time I did that, I was crapping. I was like properly shitting myself. But the truth of it is if I hadn't done well on that show, I still would have carried on doing comedy. Do you know what I mean? It's not like there's no point putting too much on it. Do you know what I mean? You just sort of try and enjoy yourself. I mean, that's the thing. You've got to try and enjoy yourself, haven't you? So I feel like I'm an absolute cliche machine today. I'm sorry about that. I normally, I have been known to express original thoughts in the past.
No, that's good advice. Now, I was talking about Lord Byron, and there's a backstory. When I was a kid, we lived on Lord Byron Road. I never knew anything about him. So when I take trips, I like to read books and get into it. And I have historical obsessions, like the French Revolution, the Battle of Little Bighorn, Voltaire. There's different things that just really fascinate me that I read about constantly. So what are some of your historical obsessions?
Jesus, that is a question, man. My historical obsessions from history.
I'm trying to let you off the hook for that last. This is your moment to shine.
Oh fuck, man! You know when I said to you, there's no make or break moment. I think I might be wrong. I think this could be my break moment.
They took away everything.
Holy
after
shit!
They heard this episode.
Yeah, Jesus. I don't know actually. I don't really.
Nothing from Sri Lankan history, British history.
I don't.
Like we were in King's Lynn yesterday, and
yes,
Captain Vancouver was from there. Who he charted the whole Pacific Northwest. That's why Vancouver is named after him. And then so I saw his statue as I was walking around the town. So I Googled him and I read his Wikipedia. Guy died in obscurity. He had some issue with some lower officer that he continually reprimanded. So that officer beat his ass. And then he had a cousin beat up that guy. Yeah. And he was kind of like a little bitch. And then he died in obscurity. And that's who Vancouver's named after. So I'm more interested in just knowledge and knowledge nuggets. So there's no secret wealth of history that you're carrying around?
No. I mean, when you just did that, what you just did, I experienced such envy. Because what you did is you just went bang, really interesting thing. I don't think I've ever had that in my locker, unless it relates specifically to a period of East Coast hip hop between '93 and '95. Do you know what I mean? That I can.
Okay, well then, and I love Wu-Tang. What's your favorite Wu-Tang song?
Well, I still love. Do you know what? When I first, because I read this book. There's this book by Will Ashen, who wrote a book all about their first album, 36 Chambers, and its impact on hip hop. And like, there's a whole chapter about the cover, and he talks about all sorts of things. When that first album came out, because I don't know how much of that sort of music you were listening to at the time it came out, but it was very much like.
The early '90s was my peak hip hop.
So we were talking about like Bad Boy and all that, and it's sort of like.
But I was more of a West Coast guy. I
was
living on the West Coast. The Tupac's my dude.
Right.
And the West Coast rap, you could dance to it, where the East Coast was more anger.
Yeah, well that's.
So you're more of an anger-based guy than dancing guy.
Well, like the East Coast kind of. That claustrophobic sort of sound lends itself is something that I related to more, I guess. But I did sort of get into West Coast. I do love West Coast hip hop as well, but Wu-Tang Clan ain't nothing to fuck with. That when that first album came out, it was so different to anything that had come out before, and that song I felt was like a real statement of intent. Do you know what I mean? And it was just sort of there were like these comic book characters. It was just amazing to me, but that's probably my favourite song. But I went to see them recently. They did a Gods of Rap tour, De La Soul, Public Enemy, and Wu-Tang, and Ghostface Killer from the Wu-Tang. I don't know how familiar you are with him, but he still looks the same. I mean, I just think they're amazing. I think they're great. They've named a district after them now, haven't they?
Where, in Staten Island?
Yeah. But they're amazing. But I'm still, even as I'm telling the story about Wu-Tang, I'm desperately racking my brains for some historical nugget that I can absolutely blow you away with. I can tell you.
You're from Crowley, right?
Yes, yeah.
Anything about Crowley you can enlighten us?
Sure, yeah. One of the most famous stories from Crawley is that what must have been about maybe 40 years ago. We had the Crawley acid bath murders, where
there you go.
There was a guy.
There's something to be proud of. Is there a blue plate historical marker there?
Yeah, I don't think there is, but there's a guy in like a workshop who killed someone and then wanted to sort of research. They found records of how he sort of researched and what he looked into to find a way of disposing of the body, and so he dissolved the body in an acid bath, and then he got away with it. So he obviously must have found it convenient and efficient, and then he sort of became addicted to it. He started doing it a fair bit. So that's That's what I can tell you about crawling. There you go. The acid
bath murders.
Yeah.
There was some British. Thank you. That's a knowledge nugget.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to say that if I'm ever asked this again.
There was a British some show. There was like a 2-hour movie about this gay British gangster, and then he goes to prison and he comes back, and like his old strip club is now the Comedy Store.
Right.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
But there's this torture scene, and he was this handsome, tough gay guy. Wasn't like a feminine guy. He was a real badass.
Right.
Gay London gangster, and there's this scene where he tortures this guy, and he makes him sing "There's No Business Like Show Business" while he's torturing him. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, that
scene alone it's like it was so great. Okay, so do you think you don't retain historical knowledge nuggets because your brain is more wired for mathematics?
Because I used to be a maths teacher.
Or were you only a maths teacher because you were good at it and you didn't have passion for it?
No, the truth is I wasn't very good at maths.
Because I suck at maths, so right. I don't know.
Well, I was okay at maths. I was obviously okay enough to be a maths teacher, but in the maths department at school, I was the worst at maths in the department. But the reason I became a maths teacher is because I had such a terrible maths teacher at school, and I didn't want the kids at my school to go through that. So I wanted to be a good maths teacher to somehow in the universe counteract what had happened to me. But I was convinced that being worse at maths than the other people in the department was a positive thing, because if you're really good at maths, if I'm really good at maths and I'm teaching you how to do something and you don't know how to do it and you can't figure it out, I don't understand why you can't understand, because to me it's like a piece of piss, right? Whereas if you say to me, I don't get the way you've explained it, I realise what the difficulty is. You know, if you sort of appreciate from their point of view a bit more, a lot of the people in the maths department were just geniuses, or maths geniuses. And so if you say, I don't understand this, you go, I don't get it, because the first time I was shown it, I could do it in my sleep, do you know what I mean? So I think that my comparative lack of ability in the subject, gave me a level of empathy that my colleagues didn't have. That's my argument.
Okay, and I only asked because maths was my worst subject.
Right.
I hated my math teacher. I used to do a joke. My algebra teacher would roll his chalk in his hand when he would talk.
Yeah. And
then when he turned around and write at the chalkboard, he would always turn around with chalk fingerprints on his. He would adjust his nutsack.
Yes.
And so I was always distracted by these chalk fingerprints on his crotch. So I blame that for why I'm horrible at maths.
Yeah.
So is there any particular, like my mother told me the greatest advice she was ever given was Control Alt Delete.
Right.
So is there any great mathematics advice you could give me and my listeners?
Sure, I can do. Math specific advice. Well, I would say that if you wanted to learn a new mathematical concept, say if you wanted to solve a maths problem, the best way that I found when I was teaching the kids, because I wanted to give these kids a curiosity, and if you say to the kids at the beginning of the lesson, I'm going to teach you how to do simultaneous equations, for example, they would go, okay, this is a new thing that we're learning, I don't give a shit about this or whatever. And so it was more difficult to engender an enthusiasm, and that is true of anything, right? So what I would try and do, and this is what I found, is that before they learn how to do it, I would tell them to try and do it with the tools that they've got. Now I knew that they weren't able to solve this simultaneous equation. I knew that they didn't know how to do it, but I said to them, with the math skills that you've got, try and solve it. Just whatever you've got, whatever tools you've got to hand, try and solve it. And I would give them 10-15 minutes to try and work it out, and they would try, normal algebra methods or things like that. They would try and solve, and they wouldn't find it. They wouldn't be able to find the answer, and then so they'd not made no progress, but they did have a hunger to find out what the way to do it was. Do you know what I mean? So then I'd go to them, so do you want to know how to do it? And they go, yeah, Jesus, I don't want to know how to do this. And then they would approach it with a level of enthusiasm that I just don't believe they would have had before we'd have done that. Now, how does that apply as advice? I just think that if you give yourself a reason to acquire that skill, everything becomes a lot easier. Do you know what I mean? And that's what I was trying to do with those kids. I wasn't just going, we're doing this now because this is the next thing on the syllabus. I was trying to give them a reason to learn the thing that we were doing. Do you know what I mean? And it just made my teaching experience a lot easier.
Nice. Your wife is a drama teacher?
She was. She's given up now.
What's the best advice she gave people for acting?
Oh, well, she's tried to give me this advice.
That's what I want. That's the nugget. That's the little pearl in the oyster we're looking for.
She basically told me that I have got to develop my level of empathy to a point where I am completely and utterly where that character is who I'm playing. So when I was playing a version of myself in this sitcom, and I was learning the lines, and I was saying, I'm learning these lines, but it just sounds so written. It sounds so like I'm reading these lines out. So I sound like I'm an actor rather than the person. And she said, you have got to spend a long time putting yourself through mentally. I want you to sit there and go through in your head what this person has gone through to the beginning of this thing, and put yourself exactly, like, not pretend to. You got to live it. You got to live it in your head to the point at the beginning of this scene. You are that person. You are that person, and you'll find that it lifts your like you'll start delivering the lines like you meant to, and you'll know what decisions to make. And what I followed that advice, and what happened to me was I wasn't having to think how I played the lines. I knew how to play the lines because that's how the person in that situation would say the things I was having to say. So it became less academic and more instinctive. Do you know what I mean? I was just sort of saying it. When I was exasperated in the scene, I was actually fucking exasperated. Do you know what I mean? And that really helped me out.
Just a few more questions.
Sure.
You're an Arsenal fan?
Yes.
Why should I like Arsenal over all the other teams?
The truth is you shouldn't, because we're in deep shit.
Didn't they just win?
No.
Thought they just won a championship.
No, they got to the Europa League final and they were beaten.
Okay.
They were beaten comprehensively by Chelsea. I love Arsenal, and they're a club of great tradition, and I'm a huge fan. I'm a season ticket holder, but I don't feel very optimistic about them because they're owned by part owned by Stan Kroenke, who you'll know from America. I don't know if you know from America.
Oh, that's the guy who owns the Red Sox.
Yes.
And he's tried to do the same thing with Arsenal that he did with
the
Red
Sox.
So
we're in a situation where we had a manager, Arsene Wenger, who was manager for like 25 years. It became a bit of a dictatorship under him, but he was a great manager. We've got this new manager, Unai Emery, and that team needs an overhaul. And Stan Kroenke and the owners of that club, the board of that club, are not willing to invest the money that's required. So I'm not particularly optimistic about how they're going to do. So there is no reason. I mean, if you like the kit, there is a reason.
I like Wigan.
Right. Okay. For what reason is that?
I never have to get my hopes up. No one else likes them.
Sure.
It never takes up too much time in my life.
Sure. Got you.
Season's over like after the third match.
Yeah, that makes sense. I can't. Yeah, I mean it works.
No, I'm just kidding. I only say Wigan because no one else ever. No one likes them. I've only had a beard for the last year.
Sure.
You seem like you might have mastered the beard thing. Is there any grooming tips you can share with me?
Yes, I've got a number of grooming tips for you. First of all, I assume you shower every day.
I do, yeah.
First thing in the morning?
I mean, I have coffee first.
Great.
But yeah, I demand a shower every day.
I would invest in. I mean, you're sort of. Are you going to grow that out any more than you are at the moment?
I've been experimenting, so I'll grow it out and then I'll buzz it down a little.
Okay. So
a nice full beard like yours, I haven't attempted.
Okay. Well, I think you should. I think it would suit you. What you need to do is, before you get into the shower, you need to brush it out. Get yourself a decent beard brush.
Oh, they're beard brushes?
Yeah, proper beard brush. You want a good, like, firm beard brush and really brush it out.
Where do you find those at?
I mean, literally, I wouldn't. Well, you probably can get them in boots, but there's loads of barbers around here, like hipster barbers, where you can get like a decent beard brush.
Okay.
And then you need to get as beard specific.
Like the Sikhs have that nice. I love like Sikh beards or.
Yeah. They probably brush him.
Okay.
Sikhs. I mean, I'm not going to generalise. I'm not going to make a racial stereotype, but I assume Sikhs are brushing their beards. But you want to and then you want to get a beard specific shampoo. Don't use what you use in your hair. You need to get a beard shampoo.
Okay.
Because it won't strip the natural oils from your face. And then what you need to do is get yourself.
I knew you had this beard stuff down.
And then you need to get yourself a nice beard oil. I use Apothecary 57 Mango and Vanilla, but I sometimes dabble in a sandalwood.
Now I want to smell your beard.
What did I put in today? I think like pine or something. But
Mango Vanilla.
Yeah.
Where do you find this oil?
That's the same. Like you can get it online. Yeah, you can get it at the barbers. Yeah. And then you just need to make sure you massage that right into the skin underneath your hair, because what's happening is when your beard grows, you
changed my life. This is great.
It is covering your skin up from the sun, and so your skin is drying out and sort of getting into bad condition. So you need to get that beard oil right in there, not too much because you don't want to look like a moron. Just a couple of drops, get that really in there, and then one final brush, and you're good to go.
So so when you get out of the shower, you massage in the oil, and then you brush it again.
Yes, but I let it dry a little bit before I do that. I sort of towel dry it before I put the oil in. Another tip, by the way, is if you're trimming your beard, okay, do not, under any circumstances, do that when you've just got out of the shower, because that's when most people trim their beard, okay, because that's what leads to trim errors, okay, because your beard is wet, it's dishevelled, you start trimming by your eye based in that situation. That's not how your beard looks. What you need to do is brush your beard, get it ready as if you're about to go out, as if you're about to leave the house. Then you trim, because that's the finished product. That'll avoid any mistakes of you having lopsided beard and shit like that.
I love it. Thank you, brother. Romesh, thanks for making the time for me, man.
No problem, man. It's lovely to speak to you.
Wonderful to see you, man, and talk to you. And it's been a joy seeing your star rise and following you on social media.
Thanks, man. Well, I'm a huge fan, so it's an honour to be on.
In closing, is there any words of advice or wisdom that you would like to share with the people of the earth?
Sure.
He said confidently. Sure. As if we could top the beard tips.
Yes. Remember my beard tips. That would be my first bit of advice. My second bit of advice that somebody gave me was attempting to completely eliminate the ego from everything you do. This is something that I've recently become sort of interested in. And this is this idea of like completely, you do whatever you do comedy or whatever you do in your job or your life, and you completely remove your ego from that whole process. You stop being defensive, start thinking about how these things affect you, and you just sort of think, I am almost like an observer, sort of immersing myself in these things, and all I'm trying to do, I'm not thinking about the future effects of this, I'm not thinking about the ramifications of the past on this, I'm completely in this moment, and I'm trying to enjoy this moment as much as I can, and that makes things a lot better. I mean, that I've only started like trying to follow that, and it's like been amazing. It's great.
To not think about the future or how things are related to you.
No, I mean, you obviously can, you can plan for the future and you think about these things. But like, say for example, I'm talking to you in this podcast. All I'm doing, my only purpose in life is to talk to you is to do this podcast with you. Right? That's the only thing that my mind is occupied with. That's it, right? Now you may not believe that based on that dreadful answer I gave to the comedy advice question, but that was still me completely engaged in the moment, and I think
it was the historical obsession.
Yes, that was dreadful. That was worse. That's true.
But
thank you for
you fought back with the acid bath words.
Thank you.
We will all know Crowley or Crawley.
Yeah. No, thank you for refocusing my mind on what the low point of this was.
No, man, it's awesome to talk to you, brother.
Yeah, you too.
And long may you run, my brother.
Thank you very much, man. You too. Cheers, dude.
Cheers, baby.
Tom Rhodes, you're a funny man. Tom Rhodes, Rhodes, you're an international comedian. Tom Rhodes, karate kick, baby, oh yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're a groovy dude. You go all around the world, telling jokes to all of the people. You are an international comedian. You're funny to everybody in every single country in the world. Tom Rhodes, I like you very much. I think you're talented and very wonderful. Tom Rhodes, you're the best guy in the world. I wanna be your friend, you should call me sometime. Here is my phone number, 603-644-0048. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Tom Rhodes, you're an international comedic sensation. Tom Rhodes, I like to listen to your podcast. Tom Rhodes, you're the best man to ever walk on the earth.